How to protect your marriage from adultery. Maintaining a happy and successful marriage takes effort and commitment on the part of both spouses. Even still, some people may find themselves caught up in an affair or find out that their spouse is having an affair. You may be wondering what some of the things are that you can do to help keep your marriage intact and keep you or spouse from straying. You can begin to protect your marriage from adultery if you take the proper steps. For instance, do things such as communicate effectively with your spouse, spend quality time together, and address conflict in your marriage. Method 1: Communicating with your spouse. 1. Talk about everything. One thing you can do to strengthen your marriage, keep it strong, and protect your relationship from adultery is to talk with each other on a daily basis. Talk about the important things and the minor everyday things. Communicating on a regular basis will keep you and your spouse connected with each other. It will also prevent either of you from seeking someone else to share with. Send your spouse an "I love you" text or instant message in the middle of the day just to let them know you care. Share your successes and failures with your spouse. For example, call your spouse when you get the promotion you've been trying for. Talk in the evenings about world and local events. For example, you might decide that each evening you two will discuss politics over dinner. Try communicating via text, email, social media, or video chat. It doesn't matter how you communicate with each other, so be creative with it. 2. Listen to each other actively. Effective communication is one of the keys to making a marriage work. It is also one of the main ways that can try to protect your marriage from adultery. The better you and your spouse communicate, the easier it will be for you to resolve conflict and keep your marriage working. Remove distractions when you and your spouse are having serious conversations. Cut off the TV, wait until the kids are asleep, and put your electronic devices on silent or vibrate. Let your spouse know you want a distraction-free conversation. Say something like, "Hey, babe, would you mind cutting the TV off so we can talk about the situation at your mom's last night?" Look at your spouse and ask your spouse to look at you when you all are discussing things. Listen when your spouse is talking instead of letting your mind drift or thinking about what you will say in response. Try to ask as many questions as you need to fully understand what they are saying. Reflect back to them what you heard so that they can confirm or clarify. 3. Express your needs. One reason people have affairs is because their needs are not being met within their current relationship. You may turn to someone outside the marriage to fulfill your needs if you don't feel your spouse is meeting them. You can protect your marriage from adultery, though, if you make sure that you and your spouse are both letting each other know what you need from the marriage and from each other. Tell your spouse when your needs aren't being met in the relationship. For example, you might have to say, "Honey, I know we're both busy, but I need us to spend some quality time together." Give your spouse the opportunity to express their needs. For instance, listen and pay attention if your spouse tells you that they need more communication or intimacy. You can also check back in periodically to see how you're doing, such as by saying, "How am I doing in this area?" You might even say, "Sweetheart, let me know what you need from me and from our marriage." Method 2: Spending quality time together. 1. Show your spouse that you care. You can help protect your marriage from adultery if you make sure that you are making an effort to show your spouse that you love them. Be sure that you think about what matters to them, not you. Your spouse may want you to take a chore off their to-do list, not buy them a gift, or vice versa. It doesn't have to be anything big or major, but taking the time to let your spouse know you care can keep you and them from straying. It's also a way of reminding yourself that you care about your spouse. Leave your spouse a small note in the bathroom or the kitchen that says, "I love you." Do something special for your spouse just to show them that you care about. For example, give your wife a massage when she comes home. Make a list of all the reasons you love your spouse and all the things you like about them. Mail the list to their job or give it to them one day. 2. Make time for intimacy. One of the best things you can do to support a healthy marriage and prevent adultery is to make sure you are spending intimate time together. Although most people think of sex when they see the word intimacy, there are lots of ways you can be intimate with your spouse. Think of ways that you can spend together, enjoying each other's company and presence. If discussing intimacy is an area of anxiety or dread for you, consult a professional to discuss it. Not discussing these concerns is one of the fastest ways to deteriorate a marriage. If you need to, then schedule a night for intimacy. It might be as simple as a few hours of cuddling or even a plan for a romantic sexual evening. Take the time to do things like hug, kiss, hold hands, and hold each other. Try to do these things on a regular basis. 3. Date each other. Even though you are married, you can still, and should still, set up dates with each other. Going out together allows you to spend time with each other outside of the house. Spending this time together will also keep the spark and excitement in your marriage and help prevent either of you from having an affair. Schedule a regular date night with your spouse. For example, every other Friday night could be date night for you two. Schedule a babysitter if you have kids. Don't just go somewhere together. Instead, take the time to put on a special outfit, dress yourself up a bit, and make it feel like a date. Method 3. Addressing conflict in your marriage. 1. Be careful who you tell about conflict. You may be tempted to rant or vent to your friends about the problems going on in your marriage, but this isn't always a good idea. The friend that you are venting to may try to use the information as a way to tempt you, or your spouse, with an affair. Instead of letting other people know the intimate details about your relationship, protect your marriage from adultery by talking to your spouse about your issues first. Turning to someone else to vent about your marriage may open the door for temptation. For example, you may start off talking to a friend about your marriage and then find yourself falling for your friend simply because you are angry with your spouse. Consider whether you would want your spouse sharing your marital problems with their friends. Sometimes talking to a professional, like a marriage counselor, can strengthen your marriage because of the objectivity they bring to the situation and problem-solving techniques they can share with you and your spouse. A good rule of thumb is to only talk about your marriage to parties that have been agreed upon by both sides. 2. Fight fair. One thing that can cause problems in a marriage is when spouses attack each other during conflict instead of resolving the actual issue. When this happens, it can create bigger problems that open the door for adultery. You can protect your marriage from adultery if you make sure that you are handling the conflicts in your marriage in a mature way. Avoid calling each names. For example, calling your husband stupid or lazy because you want him to do some home repairs isn't a good way to address conflict. Don't say things in order to intentionally hurt your spouse. For instance, bringing up the fact your wife lost her job when you know it bothers her. Stick to addressing the problem or issue. For example, if the issue is finances, then talk about ways to save instead of calling each other shopaholics. 3. Learn to apologize and to forgive. Holding on to anger, grudges, and resentment can tear any marriage apart, even without an affair. When you have done something wrong, be adult enough to apologize. And when you need to, be adult enough to forgive. Keep in mind that forgiveness does not necessarily mean that full trust is restored. That part often takes longer. Forgiveness is a choice, trust is something that takes work. However, the ability to say you are sorry and to forgive may be one of the most important things you can do to protect your marriage from adultery. When you have done something to hurt or disappoint your spouse, Then tell them you are sorry as soon as you can. You could try saying, "Honey, I'm truly sorry for what I did. I know that I hurt you and I never meant for that to happen. Could you forgive me?" Tell your spouse that you forgive them if they have done something wrong. Sometimes you have to do this even if they haven't apologized. For instance, you might say, "Babe, I know I was upset and what you did hurt me. I do accept your apology and forgive you, though." 4. Seek counseling. There may be some times in your marriage that communicating with each other, being intimate, and addressing conflict aren't enough to protect your marriage from adultery. You may have unresolved issues, major conflict, or need a different perspective on how to keep your marriage intact. Seeking counseling from a family or marriage therapist can provide you and your spouse with the support and strategies you need to help prevent either of you from committing adultery. Don't put off seeking marriage counseling either. Waiting too long can make it harder to deal with the issues. You can seek marriage counseling even for small problems in your relationship to help stave off major problems. Consider seeking counseling from your religious leader if you all are active in a religious community. Look into marriage support groups that can provide you and your spouse a way to seek support. Talk to a marriage counselor or similar professional to address serious issues in your relationship. 5. Accept reality. In some cases, there is nothing you can do to protect your marriage from adultery. It may be that you or your spouse are not committed to the relationship, or have problems with commitment in general. If you have done what you can to protect your marriage from adultery but still feel or know that an affair is occurring, you need to accept reality and decide how to address it. If you or your spouse has committed adultery in the past, it may take extra effort on both of your parts to protect the marriage from adultery in the future. Remember that it takes two people to make a marriage work. You have to admit it and address it if either of you aren't committed to keep the marriage free from affairs.